The fact that Ellie... Oh, no, I picked the girl. Fire Rain telling me I picked the
Hi,
dude.
I'm Sky. And you must be... Vincent?
Just V.
V. Just V. Only people who know me real well can use my real name.
Okay then. V.
Welp, looks like this'll be interesting.
So, V. You're dying.
This is always so weird because it's like, so let's talk about the fact that you're dying. It's like, oh baby.
Looking for someone named Evelyn Parker. Used to work here. Know her? Know where she is?
You need answers. That's clear. Just not the ones you think you need.
Asked you a simple question.
Evelyn Parker. Not the most important thing you're looking for, is she? I can smell your fear. You're afraid of something else.
So I'm always like kind of wondering, because obviously like I've said on the previous streams, play the role-playing game in real life. So I'm just like really wondering how exactly the doll chips work. Just from like a basic functionality standpoint, like, okay, so I get this chip implanted. It obviously has the ability to, at least while active, control my actions and do so without my conscious mind recording any of it, as we kind of will see here shortly. But like, obviously it's intuiting, like, this is what you need. We need to talk about the fact you're dying. You're dealing with some things right now, and we really need to talk about that. It's like, okay, so we need to talk about that. How the hell does this person know that that is what is going on with me? Obviously, like, there's some telemetry from like jacking at the desk. You feed data into the system, so obviously some of that's going to filter, I'm sure, downstream to whoever the doll is that you're working with. But yeah, it's very odd. Just especially once you get to the point where you kind of see this trance snap, and they remember nothing about it, so they're not consciously processing most of this, at least to my understanding. And then like the attitude shift towards your needs, or your like what you're going through, that they're like so interested in when they're tranced, is like totally absent there. And I get like that is probably pretty normal, given kind of like the fact that essentially this is like, hey, we're gonna hypnotize you for like, I don't know, however long your client needs you, and things could happen. Maybe you'll have a therapy session, maybe you'll end up banging. We don't know which. It's like, because it's strongly implied that this is sex work at a base level. So I'm just like, I'm very like intrigued by the fact that like, okay, so we're just gonna hypnotize you, and whatever happens, kind of like, it's kind of like, it's both spooky as hell, just that like, yeah, we're just gonna like do this. You're gonna have no memory of it. You're gonna have no ability to like self-intervene. And then on top of that, we're also gonna make it so that that like, we're just gonna pass telemetry through you, like you're just like a flesh bot, basically. And whatever happens to you. That's just the way it flies. But I mean, that if it really was just that base and like just that simple, it would explain a lot of the stigma toward people who get doll chips, because there's like a lot of that in the game. That there's like, oh, you got a doll chip? What are you doing? Like, why would you do that? It's like seen as, based on context, obviously. It's seen, from what I can gather, as like a very desperate move. Like, oh, you're a sex worker. That's cool. Like, you're a Joy Toy out on Jig Jig Street or whatever. That's cool. Like, if you're just doing, like street corner prostitution, like the good old days, like, that's cool. We're good with that. Totally fine. No problem. You have full awareness. You have your full ability to self-intervene. Like, chill, chill, chill. That's what, like, all the girls at Lizzie's, chill with all that. Braindance stuff, porn stuff, all good. Classic sex work in the act. Fantastic. The moment though, you get a hypno chip implanted in you. Now we've got a problem. And I get why that would be just from like the worker's perspective. That makes a ton of sense. But it makes me wonder like, okay, but then like what was the initial value proposition for these things? Like that's always kind of what I'm wondering is like what in the world, even if it's warped, even if it's like this just janky corporate perspective on like, well, this you see helps us do this other thing or like boost productivity in this really sketchy, probably not humane way. So I'm just kind of like, what? Like, was this just seen as like a way to like avoid trauma from it? Maybe? I don't know. That's shower thoughts in Cyberpunk. This is what we do here. But I could see it because part of the deep lore, again, we're going to stay paused here for just a minute longer and then I'll get back, I promise. Part of the deep lore of Cyberpunk says that brain dances, the things that like let you experience other people's memories or experiences, you know, and obviously they can be edited and all that, but that tech was initially made, I think in the lore it was by Harvard. It was either Harvard or the University of California, and they made it to deal with trauma. It was like a therapy tool, so that you could go back, relive, and then by experience edit your memory of like experiences, so you could kind of confront your trauma head on and like deal with it with a therapist head on, rather than forcing yourself to like recollect what you had before. So like braindance was originally used in therapy, and then later it was also seen as a. I'm sure that there was probably some black use of it this way as well, by governments or law enforcement. But in the lore, it's also said that even in the time of the Red, that the current edition of the tabletop takes place, the police and other law enforcement agencies use it as a punishment, and it's definitely, I believe, stated stated as rumor, or maybe even factually confirmed that they use it to torture. So you know, like high-tech war crimes, yay. But yeah, so like the point of me saying all of that is the braindance was developed for one thing, and then it became adapted for entertainment uses. It was not built for entertainment as its primary use, but it became developed into that. It evolved into that. So I could almost see the doll chips being something like, hey, need to do some trauma shit, like go into a war zone. Well, what if we don't have to treat our veterans anymore? We just implant them with this chip. There are little flesh bots on the ground, and you know, in cases where making robots or like autonomous fighters is thin or difficult to do because of whatever your local economy is, as long as you can fabricate this one little chip, you know, you'll have a bunch of ranting, raving super soldiers that'll charge at the enemy and don't even respond to pain because they literally cannot consciously process it because of the quote-unquote miracle of technology. And then maybe from there, it became adapted for other uses like sex work, which it's still sketchy. Like none of that's good, but you know, we think about these things here. The ethics of an ethicless society. We love it. It's so fun. Anyway, oh whoops. Getting back to this, let's see. What I'm afraid of.
Think you
A
know me
lot.
well?